It just crossed my mind now. There's something I want to ask you, and I usually have these conversations with women more so than with guys. When I told my parents I wanted to play football, it was very difficult to get my mom to sign the permission slip to let me play football. This was also 2007, where people didn't know about CTE, people didn't know about concussions, people didn't know about. Dude, back then, the biggest concern you had playing football was worst case scenario was paralysis, right? That's the ultimate. Like to this day, that's probably the worst one. But like people were, I got a concussion when I played high school football. We're playing Long Island City, and I got hit, and my head hit like the cement underneath
Oh my God.
the gate.
Ouch.
And my buddy Dominic played for LIC, and he came over and like picked me up. And we're like arch rivals, our two schools, but like that's like the homie. And he picked me up, and then I went to his coach, and I was like, "Yo, coach, what's the next play?" And his coach knew me. He's like, "Nikki, you're on the wrong sideline." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh my God.
So
You're
I
that
sprint.
disoriented.
I was like rattled. I still played though. If this was to happen now,
You're
you're
off
done.
the
You're done.
field,
If you even
yeah.
show it, I ended up calling timeout also. Went over to my coach. My coach was like, "Are you all right?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." And then I kind of just like mustered it up. Like adrenaline kicked in, and I was like, "Yeah, it's our rival. It's a close game. I can't do that." So I had a difficult time telling my mom to sign the permission slip for me to go play football. I grew up as a soccer kid. I also kicked in college because, my dad played professionally until he was 19. Then he tore his quad, and then he started smoking cigarettes. And before you know it, he put on like 50 pounds, and then he moved to the States. So that was the end of the professional career for Tony. But the reason why I asked that is because women, obviously, you want to have kids one day, right?
Yeah.
There's a very interesting conversation that pops up when sports come into the mix. And I love football. It's birthed everything that I have going on now. Would you let your kids play sports like that? And for example, let's use football as the sport that we're talking about here.
To be honest, until you asked me this question, I really hadn't put much thought into that. But I don't know. I guess if my kid was really passionate about it and really wanted to play, it'd be hard for me to tell them no. But on the flip side, like you mentioned, just hearing that paralysis, I guess you can, in any sport, an injury can
Yeah, it's just,
happen.
that one is,
There's just more opportunities.
it's more
for some-
barbaric, and
Yeah.
it's a gladiator sport where the objective is to
tackle
blow
someone.
shit up.
Yeah. I guess I would have to think about it more, but it is kind of scary because you don't want anyone to get hurt,
Right.
right? Even when you're watching and you see someone get hurt on the field, like it's heartbreaking.
Oh,
you know?
dude,
It really is.
It ruins like the rest of my day when
It's
someone
horrible.
gets
Even
hurt.
if it's on like a team that you don't like you don't want to see anyone like hurt themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I always say I want them to jam like a pinky or something, so they can miss a couple plays.
But
It's cool.
you hear these horror stories of like someone like their career's over
Yeah.
because of one bad hit.
Yeah.
Or something tragic happens, and it's like you never know. Like you can get hit. You can trip down the stairs and like kill yourself, which sounds terrible. So like you can't live in fear really.
Right,
But
right.
when it comes, I guess, to football, there's so many times where you hear stories or like when you mentioned with a concussion, like you get enough concussions, and one concussion is serious. Several, especially from a young age, let's say from high school or even from middle school, a kid wants to play, like you don't want to rattle their brain from such a young age. You don't want them getting hurt. So I guess I would have to really think about it. I don't know, my dad played ice hockey, which is also a rough sport, recreationally. So I would go to his games when I was little, and you see people playing hockey and they're beating the shit out of each other,
Right.
on the ice. So I guess there's a little bit of, roughness in every sport. But I don't know. That's a deep conversation to have, I think, on whether or not you'd want your kid to play football, because no one wants anyone to get hurt.
Right.
Yeah,
it's fascinating because my friend Jess, she's born and raised in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And I mean, football is religion down there. Like football is, I think the highest earning state official in Alabama is Nick Saban, who's the coach of Alabama. Like they run shit down there, and everything in the South. So when I asked her this question, she's like, "Fuck yeah, he's playing football."
Yeah.
But then I asked someone who maybe isn't a football fan, maybe didn't grow up with it. Like you said, your dad played hockey.
Yeah.
It's a very weird dynamic. And I haven't had a chance to ask people this question because Alan's not going to give birth to someone, you know? So it's like weird, but I'm always fascinated by that.
I guess the thing is, too, it's like, how do I know that my child's not going to be a amazing or NFL level quarterback one day?
Right.
And I'm robbing them of that opportunity because I, don't want them. I mean, obviously I don't want them to get a concussion, but like, I guess it depends like how passionate they are. Maybe they try it out, and if they hate it, then that answers it for me. If they love it, it's just, there's more awareness of, all the risks that come with it. But
that's the thing.
It is.
That's why I put an emphasis on the beginning of this conversation about the football and the concussions and stuff.
And I even think the NFL too is much more aware. And cognizant of the health of their players.
Right. Well, they also got hit with a big lawsuit.
Yeah.
And because back in the day it was, oh, you're concussed. All right, follow the finger.
Yeah.
What day is it? Sunday. All right, get back out there. But then you had
all those long-term impacts of concussions.
Right. So now they actually have a doctor who is a neutral doctor, and they get buzzed from the booth up top when they see, Julio Jones is stumbling, get him out. So they'll stop the game.
Yeah.
And even if Julio is trying to pretend that, everything is sunshine and rainbows, well, he got to come out, goes into the tent.
Which is how it should be.
Yeah, I don't disagree or hate them for doing that. And I like that the game is a little safer. Like you have the purists that are like, back in the 70s, it was rough and tough. It's like, shit evolves, right?
Yeah.
Like early 2000s, late 1990s, you were able to smoke on planes. Think about how crazy that is, right?
But also, what good is that if it's all rough and tough back then, and then your favorite player dies or gets injured so badly that they
can't play anymore.
Funny.
Yeah, I think you have to be able to adapt with just technology and current stuff. Like, think about it, dude. 5 years ago, if a car pulled up in front of your apartment was like, "Oh, here for Valerie," that wasn't a cab, would you get into that?
No.
Now it's
Uber.
Now it's Uber. It's like
there's so many things that.
So, but it's the idea of adapting, and it's weird. Like I don't know if I would let my kid play football, and I love football. I mean,
you're also more in like the weeds in it than I am too.
Right.
So like, I'd probably want to pick your brain and be like, well, why? If you love football so much, why wouldn't you want your kid?
Right.
Like, why wouldn't you want your kid to play football?
It does have to do a lot with the position. To get super nerdy on it, if he's a wide receiver, running back, linebacker, where it's constantly you're in collisions, I'd be more hesitant. Now, if he's a quarterback, it's different because nowadays you can't even can't even blow on a quarterback. You're going to get penalized, and guys don't want to hit quarterbacks because they're going to get fined. They're going to get suspended. So you have that dynamic as well. There was a couple of years ago, Kyler Murray was the best player in college football. He won the Heisman Trophy, which goes to the best college player. And he was a legitimate baseball star. And the conversation was, does he play baseball or does he play football? And everyone was saying, well, baseball, the money's guaranteed. It's a safer sport, longevity. And I was saying, I was one of the few people that were just hammering the table like, dude, definitely play quarterback. So I would say, like, if it's a quarterback, go and play quarterback because they get hurt still, don't get me wrong. But it's a lot safer for that position. So I do think, to answer your question, it has to do with the position. Okay. More so than the actual sport, because quarterbacks get paid just as much as baseball players do nowadays. Like, especially if you're like...
But it's so much harder to be a quarterback than it is to be... I mean... there's less of a chance of, let's say, being a quarterback.
Right. And I'm also talking about, like, for you to make the money, you're talking about being a top 7
Yeah.
player at your position. So there is that as well. But yeah, we're talking about the 1% of 1%. But yeah, I'm fascinated by that conversation. Like I would let them play. It's weird, right? I would let them play soccer, but girls soccer is one of the highest concussion
My
rates.
sister my sister played soccer for a while. She had gotten a concussion and she got stitches too.
Yeah.
So
But
I
you would
mean,
never assume.
you
right?
don't relate like high injury. I mean, I guess like football, a high contact sport. I mean, so was soccer, but in a different way. But not really. No, football. I mean, you're colliding with people all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas with soccer, like I wouldn't necessarily. If you told me between football and soccer, which one's more at risk of getting hurt, like obviously it's football.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily relate soccer with being a sport where you get severely injured, which you can. Like you screw up your knee, you fall the wrong way. I mean, you can get really, really hurt.
Like you might tear an ACL, you might, blow a hamstring or something, but that doesn't leave long-term daily functioning ramifications on you, like CTE and concussions and, not being able to walk, like shit like that is extreme. So that's where that conversation comes from.
Soccer is the safer choice, let's say.
Yeah.
When you're comparing it to football,
Yeah.
or baseball is a safer choice too. But I mean, like I said, you can get injured in any sport, but football probably. I mean, the points that you're bringing up, I mean, there's just more chances of getting severely injured or having long-term issues because of the contact.